Today I'm going to take a look into the Hour of Devastation spoilers and pick the top 10 cards that I think we'll see play in Commander 1v1. I want to preface this by saying that Hour of Devastation added a ton of cards that are going to be pretty good in multiplayer Commander, but not many of them are going to be good in 1v1 Commander. I picked 10 as an arbitrary number, but I don't think that there are actually 10 cards in the set that are definitely going to see play in 1v1 Commander. Still, I think it's interesting to look at the cards in the margin that might see niche play, so why don't we just jump right in? I want to start with some honorable mentions. These are cards that seem good, but don't really have a deck that they slot into. First, there's Samut the Tested. Most Planeswalkers are going to see some niche play in Commander 1v1, and Samut has an interesting +1 ability. The -2 Fork Bolt ability is also pretty relevant in the format. If there were a Xenagos deck or something like that in the format, I think this would get slotted right in. As it is, though, I don't think there are many decks that really want these abilities. Hazoret's Undying Fury is a card that I think just misses the mark on what could be a playable card in the format. It's certainly a powerful ability, but the untap clause really holds it back. There are a few ways to offset this, and there may be a Duretti artifact deck that wants to try this out, but I'm not sure that the power level is strong enough to merit the amount of work required to not time walk yourself. Lastly, we have Driven to Despair. This card has all the components of a good card in the format. It's cheap and it can create a lot of value, but what it needs is a green-black go-wide deck, and such a deck doesn't really exist. So let's move on to the top 10. In number 10, I have a rather boring utility land in Chefet Dunes. There's not a lot to say about this, except that it's a pretty low opportunity cost to just shove this in your Thalia deck. It's an uncounterable pump spell for your entire team that isn't made more expensive by Thalia. 5 mana is a lot, but it could potentially win the game, or make blocks more difficult since there are a number of first strikers in Thalia decks. At number 9, we have Razza Cast the Foul-Blooded. Griselbrand this is not, but that's good because Griselbrand is banned. It's still very powerful, and the activated ability doesn't cost mana, but it's competing in an opportunity space with the much cheaper, but not repeatable, Sidisi. I don't think it will ever be a format staple, but the ability can't be ignored, and some people are going to be trying this out. I think it's probably a pretty horrible commander. It's probably much better suited in the 99 as a animation target, but that leaves it once again competing with Sidisi, which almost certainly does it better. At number 8, we have Claim to Fame. Claim to Fame is a slightly worse Unearth attached to a slightly worse Reckless Charge. Unearth is just barely played in the format, and Reckless Charge really isn't, so this card might never be played. What this card really needs is an aggressive red-black deck that really wants both sides of the card. The only deck that really even comes close to this is Grenzo Dungeon Warden, although Grenzo might just want another goblin instead. Still, it's an interesting card that might see some niche play. At number 7, I have Hour of Promise. I overlooked this card at first because it's quite expensive, but then I noticed it said land, not basic land or forest. So it's a sorcery with Primeval Titan's ability. It's obviously much worse than Primeval Titan, although a mana cheaper, but Ayavugan is such an important part of beating control decks, sometimes you just want more ways to get it. That said, the 3 desert trigger is probably never going to happen, so you're probably better off just playing Reap and Sow and Crop Rotation. At number 6, I have Bloodwater Entity. There are a couple of Tier 2, Tier 3 decks like Jorian or Shu Yun that want every part of what this card has to offer. Flying, prowess, and getting a card back are very good in these decks, and I think this elemental just slots right into those. If this thing had flash or put the card into your hand, it would see play in a great many more decks, but that would make it almost certainly too powerful for standard. I think such a card would be printable, but only in a supplemental product. Since Hour of Devastation isn't a supplemental product, we get a creature that's good, but will only likely see play in the decks that really want it. At number 5, I have Supreme Will. This is a versatile counterspell that doubles as an impulse if it isn't needed. Impulse is obviously much better than just cycling, and Baral decks are playing enough bad counterspells that a card with this power and versatility is likely quite playable. At number 4, I have Uncage the Menagerie. Maybe I'm too high on this card, but it seems like it has a lot of possibilities. I really think the sweet spot is X equals 6. For 8 mana, you can get a Primeval Titan, fetching Eye of Ugin and Eldrazi Temple. You can get a Woodland Bellower, fetching Fierce Empath and putting Ulamog into your hand. And then you can get Duplicant, killing your opponent's best creature. And that's just the 3/6 drops that basically every Nissa, Selvala, or Thalia deck are already playing. You could even slot in an extra 6 drop if you wanted, like Greenwater and Marassa. I wouldn't push it much further than that, though. You don't want to clog up your deck with a bunch of expensive creatures. But even if you're getting 3 or 4 creatures, it's still a ton of value for 8 mana. It doesn't win the game outright, but it's going to be very hard for your opponent to come back from this, even if they Wrath. Importantly, though, it's a really versatile card. At a modest X equals 3, you can get something like Reclamation Sage, Tireless Tracker, and Eternal Witness for 5 mana. That seems like a really good value. Or for X equals 4, you get Oracle Modiah, Vizier of the Menagerie, which is a flavor win, Thought-Knot Seer, and Sirach, who is instantly active, for 6 mana. The versatility doesn't end there, though. On Cage the Menagerie can get any color creature, not just green creatures. So there might be some fetchable combos that this card can go find. Or it can just be a utility spell. It's pretty poor at X equals 1, but sometimes you just want Scavenging Ooze, and then you can get another 2-drop along with it. Either way, I think Selvala decks are definitely going to be playing this. Nissa and Thalia decks will probably want to be slotting it in, and there may even be some other decks that find room for this as well. I really hope this meets my expectations. At number 3, I have Nimble Obstructionists. This is definitely not Vendilion Clique. Notably, you don't get Disruption and a body. You have to choose between the two. Still, a flash 3/1 flyer is going to be pretty good at pressuring planeswalkers and life totals. As far as its cycling ability goes, we already know that Stifle is quite good in the format. It's slightly less good at 3 mana, but being an uncounterable Stifle with a cantrip attached might be enough to make it worthwhile. But it's the versatility that makes this card good, and I think it has enough wings, to break into the format, although it might fall short of becoming a staple of the format. Still, I'm going to be picking one up. At number 2, I have another boring utility land in Scavenger Grounds. Maybe I'm rating this a little high, but I really think a lot of decks are going to want this ability, and the opportunity cost is pretty low. This is instant speed graveyard hate in any color. Obviously, 3 and 4 color decks are going to have trouble running this, and are probably running counterspells anyways. But a lot of mono and 2-color decks are probably going to want to trade a land slot for this. And at the top slot, I have Romanov Excavator. Crucible of the Worlds is obviously a very good card, but making it into a green creature means that there are so many ways to fetch it out. Yes, it can be killed more easily, but you can usually get at least one land back first. And a lot of decks that are playing Crucible of the Worlds now are just going to play both later. I think most green decks in the format are going to want to play this card, and I don't think that's an exaggeration at all. Obviously, Gitrog Monster and Thalia are going to be first in line to have the snake join their team. So what did you think? Did I miss anything? Did I over or underrate anything? What cards are you excited for in Hour of Devastation? Let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to hear from you.